Welcome, everybody. Good to see you. Claire Wasserman. By the way, welcome to a Sunday session. This is part of an ongoing series I'm doing all month, which I'll get into in just a second. So, for those who are returning, good to see you again. Last session, which I'll recap in just a minute, was all about setting better goals. Today is all about getting out of our own way. So, just briefly about me. So, I'm going to do a teeny spiel, nothing compared to what it was last time. But I am the founder of Ladies Get Paid, which is a newsletter, podcast, and coaching practice that helps you increase your worth and activate your potential. I also have another weekly members only email, really good work advice. I like to think that I give really good work advice. I've been doing this for over a decade, and I was in the recruitment field before that, and obviously very passionate about supporting women. And this is the email that I got relatively recently. It was during the pandemic. And what is time at this point? It's all blended together. And it is the email that kind of changed my mission. I used to be really obsessed with getting new promotions and raises because I wanted to see more women in leadership. 1000%, I still do. That's still a huge part of what I do. But I think the way we were going about it, when I say we, I think that's a lot of us. I'm 38 and I work with women who are much older and also much younger. We were burning ourselves out to get there. And was it worth it? And I thought this email this woman sent me, I feel lost after being so driven and focused. And now I just am having a hard time finding my way back to that. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to. I agree. I think we need a new definition of success and a new way to make ambition easier. That is my personal mission for Ladies Get Paid. And so to start us off this year, I am doing 4 sessions. This is the second one, setting better goals, getting out of our way, protecting our energy, and transforming challenges. I think if you can master these things, which by the way, they're always a work in progress, of course, because things change and we change with it. But if you can really get the core elements of these 4 skill sets down, you will find an easier way to reach whatever you want, whatever your ambition looks like as you define it. And I continue on this work from these 4 sessions with you all this month through really good work advice. I'll be giving you all a big discount to that, which is a weekly digestible deep dive into a skill, just like I'm doing right now. And then we do a meetup. So you're getting a bit of a sneak peek right now. Last session, it was all about setting ourselves up for follow through success. And I reoriented us towards this other version of a SMART goal. You might have heard of it, right? That's like kind of the gold standard framework for reaching our goals. And we talked about instead of what goal we think we want, what goal do we deeply need? And that usually comes from a desired feeling we want to have in our life. Then focusing next on an area in our life that would have a really big impact if we started to change some things to support the desired feeling, and then action steps. And in those action steps, how can we build a sustainability muscle? Meaning, how can we make everything just easier for ourselves, right? So we can be consistent with it. And something I like to talk about a lot, which I may have mentioned last time, is I never really want to set a plan for my aspirations because that's not life, right? Life is obstacles usually, right? So better to be prepared, I think, for all the potential roadblocks in our way of living the life we want or reaching the goals we desire so that we're not caught flat-footed. And that's what kind of today is about. It's about the internal obstacles. So I would love to see the chat pop off. How many of you identify as perfectionists? This is a safe space, guys. Okay. No, we're not doing this on LinkedIn. No boss is going to see you here, I don't think. So tell me if any of this resonates. Perfectionism. Do you struggle with procrastination or self-doubt, self-sabotage? Do you self-berate? I'm obviously missing many other adjectives I could use to describe here. How about I put it this way? Is there ever all of them, right? And they're all connected. Do any of you feel like, and actually be very curious if anyone doesn't feel this way, is there a part of you that you wish were different because this part of you is getting in the way of living life as you desire it, right? And self-berate, another word for that would be self-sabotage, or excuse me, self-flagellate is my other favorite word. So just, are you a mean girl to yourself? Okay, let me tell you, I have lived a double life for many years where I, on one side, was go-getter, golden girl, very success, achievement oriented, extrovert. Okay. But on the other side, I had this part of me that I call a lazy POS, right? Piece of shit. Sorry, not sorry to curse, but I really procrastinated. And these two parts of myself really felt like they were at war with each other. And I'm sharing this from a recent program that I ran where a woman submitted to me, here's the part that gets in her way. And I'd love to hear from you all in the chat if this feels resonate with you. She says she struggles to relax because she's anxious and overwhelmed about all the things she has to get done. But then she's too depleted energy-wise to get things done and or is having a hard time getting started on things that she thinks will be challenging. And she blames her perfectionism, lack of patience, low frustration tolerance. So then she doesn't get all the things done that she tells herself that she needs to, which leads to being mad at herself, which then she gets paralyzed. And then she's paralyzed, but it's not like she can even relax when she's paralyzed, right? Because she's anxious and overwhelmed about all the things she needs to get done. This resonates with anybody. Love to see you in the chat. I share it because it certainly does with me. This is another way of explaining the cycle that can happen for those of us who get caught between working really hard, then we procrastinate, we self-doubt, right? Again, these parts of ourselves that get in our way. There's usually some kind of trigger. So it could be an external event, right? You get an email from a boss that, are they mad at me? Or maybe nothing outside of you happens. It's all inside. For whatever reason, I don't know, a thought pops into your head. Then this part of you, this familiar part that you really don't like, it gets activated somehow. And in response to that, usually it's physical. You get tired or anxious or tension, right? It's in your body. And then that leads to some sort of action you take or not action, right? Because when you don't take an action, that's still an action. That's still a choice, right? The procrastination, right? It is technically a choice. But does any of this feel like it's not your choice, right? You're just in this sort of zombie cycle. And even though you're really trying hard to disrupt it, it just won't budge. This is my goal for us today. How can we disrupt this vicious cycle and find a better way to self-engage? And so I will be giving you 5 skills that when you practice them consistently, you will transform the relationship that you have with yourself. This is how I like to call it: lose your baggage, find yourself. And prove to you that this really works. So it's worked on me. I'm always the guinea pig for all of the things I share with you. But then I did a 28-day program with 30 women, and I won't out her. She can if she wants. She really shared that. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you. You can see it on this slide right here. She really came with deep-seated anxieties about identity, direction, and purpose, and struggling to follow through and build trust. And then she saw change that happened because she really committed in the 28-day experience. She worked on these 5 skills. So for today, we don't have 28 days. We've got a little over 28 minutes, 5 skills plus exercises. We'll do reflections, breakouts, a discussion, and then a gift for attending live. As I'm speaking, feel free to jump into the chat, share anything that either is resonating, or if you have a question. Most likely I won't respond to the question until the end, but who knows, maybe someone else will say, hey, I got an answer for you. So the first skill is to cultivate compassion. You've probably heard this before and you're rolling your eyes because guess what? It feels, at least for me, when I was told to be more compassionate, I felt like I didn't need that. What I needed was to say, work harder. No. Compassion is the key, but how do you do it? So first, let's think of the part about ourselves that we most dislike. Okay. So for me, that was that procrastinator part, the part that gets in your way, the bad habit or toxic thought pattern that makes it harder for you to reach your goals or experience life as you desire. So I'm going to venture a guess that you have tried hard to change this part of yourself, but for some reason it just won't budge. Now, here are 2 reasons why. First, you're in a combative relationship with it, right? You don't like it. Therefore, you are in combat. That puts you into this kind of contraction. So this sort of freeze mentality, which makes it a lot harder to see and act on alternative solutions. You're just not thinking clearly, okay? And then you can't see options of different ways to approach the situation. And this part of you, by the way, is acting up because it is waving a flag for attention and doesn't trust that you've understood or are capable of taking care of yourself. Yes, there is a positive intention behind this part of you, even if it's wreaking havoc on your life. I like this little illustration. This comes, by the way, from a wonderful therapeutic modality called internal family systems, IFS. Highly recommend you check out the book, No Bad Parts by Dr. Richard Schwartz. And I just put that in the chat. So this part of you that you don't like, okay, it's part of a team of helpers that you were assigned, and it's your responsibility to corral them. This is my kind of cute way of giving you a little bit of therapy here, okay? It popped up when you were younger. It was a way of dealing with a situation as best as it could. Again, intention is to help you. However, over time, it becomes maladaptive. It's no longer helping you, even though it thinks it is. Here's the problem. It doesn't trust that you can handle life without it acting up. So what we're going to be doing in the next few slides is demonstrating to this part that we are capable. By the way, when it keeps acting up, right? Like making you tired or self-sabotaging, it's trying to get you to listen to them. It's not working because you keep presumably saying to this part, stop. You're telling this part, stop. We have to validate. We have to honor. We have to listen to this part. We have to love this part. Yeah. You're not going to get there tomorrow or even the next day, but that is ultimately what we are working for, to love all of the parts of ourselves equally. Otherwise, we're going through life with some conditional love, and we don't want that. So I like this exercise called Who's at Your Table? Select the part that is causing you the most distress. So again, whether it's your procrastinator, it's your perfectionist. Again, if you're telling me they're all connected, yes, they are. You're totally right. But we've got to treat them as individuals, right? Teammates who came to help you, but right now are going rogue. Name them. All right, perfectionist Patty. I don't know. Identify what they are attempting to protect you from. So this is the intent. Always positive intent. Why? Because we are wired to survive. We do not do things unless somehow in our subconscious we feel that it is helping us. How do they manifest often? And then what are their triggers usually? And then short and long-term consequences. Of course, you're not going to have time to write all this stuff out now, but in our breakouts, and I'll go back to this slide, don't worry, just write down the part that's causing you the most distress and what you think they're attempting to protect you from. That's the most important thing for you to do right now. And if you were to do ongoing work with me or as part of any of the things, programs that I run, we would really work on asking this part, what do you need so that you don't have to work so hard? That's really critical. Work so hard. We don't want to work hard anymore, guys. That's part of the mission of Easier Ambition. And so this is a fun way of looking at it. You've got this self, this inner self, and we don't have time to go too deep into self, but you've got parts that are getting in the way, and we really have got to know them, just like a team. Next level is, inner self and heart. Because that's your core. This is at when you're born. Listen, I've got 10-month-old twins. Like they are pure self. They're pure, they're self-centered, right? They're all about survival and they're pure love. They don't have a perfectionist part yet. They don't have a self-sabotager, okay? This is all getting developed through experiences in life and how we're socialized. But when you are a young baby child, usually it takes till about 2 years old, you're just pure heart, okay? Speaking of heart, love letter. So I call it mind trash, by the way. So part of, like when I say a part of you, another way of describing it could be mind trash. So you might see me interchange this for a few slides. I think this is the only one where I put it. So you write a love letter to your mind trash. Okay, so dear perfectionist Patty, and you say, here's how you've helped me so far. Okay. And then you ask her, what do you need so that you don't have to work so hard? Which let her speak to you if you can. And then maybe come up with some ideas of ways that you can help perfectionist Patty not have to work so hard. This is obviously a much longer exercise to be done. We won't do it today. But if you feel called to try later on, I invite you to do that. Skill number 2, practice presence. Okay. Tell me if any of this feels a bit bullshitty to you. What if I told you that it's possible to have utter chaos happening around you and that you feel absolutely none of it? In fact, you feel completely at peace. Okay, it is possible. I'm telling you, it is possible for you to create an inner world protected from outer circumstances. Or what I find to actually be more difficult, but still achievable, is an inner self protected from those pesky parts, right? Like the procrastination and self-doubt that keep getting in your way. Meaning you could still procrastinate or self-sabotage or self-doubt and still feel at peace because you are engaging with those parts in a way more objective way, a way in which you can hold it all with perspective and love and not get caught up in it. And so the ultimate goal is this, is to be able to access this inner hub, which, by the way, huge fan of Dr. Dan Siegel. You want to Google him. He's got some really good books. He has a good illustration here. It's a little bit like that heart, that self as a heart, self as calm. There's a part of you at all times that's available to be accessed. It's not easy, but it is available to be accessed, and it will always be open and aware and peaceful, calm, receptive, and clear. But we really tend to get caught up in our thoughts, feelings, dreams, body sensations, perceptions, memories, right? We tend to live in this outer circle, but the goal is to really get here, right? Because when those parts act up, they're not trusting. that they're not familiar with this inner hub, right? So it's important to practice getting back into the driver's seat of your mind and body, strengthening your ability to self-center. So how do we practice getting here, this inner hub and not the outer hub, outer spokes? I like to call it thought wrangling. So the point of these exercises right here in the bullet points, the point is to get comfortable corralling inner chaos, and this is critical, guys, and not being good at it, especially for us who like to get those A's or A pluses in my case, perfectionist, etc. It sucks to suck. It sucks to be bad at something. And so if you've ever tried to meditate and you're a person who doesn't like to do it, most likely you don't like to do it because you feel uncomfortable. Like, what do I do with my hands, right? All this breathing. And then you find your mind wandering and you're like, I hate this. I'm bad at it. I'm bad at it. That's the freaking point. The point is to be bad at it and still do it anyway. So here are some suggestions for thought wrangling. This is one of my favorites. It can be 5 minutes. Just quickly walk around the block and go and take photos with your phone, or not. You could just take a memory picture in your mind. Just anything that sparks a sort of inner stirring, right? Like it could look a little odd, or maybe challenge yourself. Can I find beauty in what I'm seeing on this street? Maybe start with, all right, how many textures and patterns can I point out? You will find that all of a sudden you're not in the outer spoke. You are feeling a lot calmer, that self-settling, because you fully focused everything into this one funnel that you're doing. Or the six senses. What do I smell, hear, touch, taste, right? This is also a wonderful kind of meditation. If you find your thoughts spiraling, a great way to stop it is literally just ask yourself, what's my next thought? And it will stun you. I've tried it many times. It will stun you. You will go, I don't know what my next thought is. Okay. Obviously, by the way, one of the free gifts you're getting today for everybody who attended live, and I will put it into the chat at the end, and also you can email me back, is I recorded a meditation for you all. I think it's about 6.5 minutes to listen to in the morning. And it goes along with that who's at your table exercise. But the point is, those were just a couple of, I would say these are easier meditations to do for somebody who doesn't like to sit and be still, because you're active in it. And that's still a meditation, to be active. Not all meditations are meant to empty your mind. But ultimately, we do want to get to that place where we can sit here. And for every thought that we have, we give it a mental hug, visualize releasing it, go back to breathing, feeling just an inner silence. Up, there's the thought again. Hug it, release it, back to the inner hub, okay? It's about the catch and release, the catch and release. Because when you do that, you are literally rewiring your brain. Seriously, it's called neuroplasticity. We don't have time to get too deep into it, but this is not like just a joke with a little, you're lifting the muscle. The brain is not a muscle technically. The lifting of the weight is the consistency of noting I have thoughts and feelings and I'm letting them go and doing it again and again. Some pro tips, because again, consistency is key. Set an alarm for morning, midday, and evening. And this can be, a 60-second meditation. That's all you need. I'd rather you do more repetitions that are short, okay, than doing 20 minutes of meditation. Also, maybe practice this stuff when you're in moments of transition. What do I mean by that? When you are sitting in the car, waiting in line, or waiting for a Zoom to start. What do you probably normally do? If you're me, you're looking at your phone. No, close your eyes, corral your mind. And then also bundle it with things you do already every day. So if every morning you go to your coffee pot, right, and make coffee, that's a great six senses, right? Smell, touch, taste, hear. I never remember the rest of the senses, right? Skill number 3, carry it lighter. By the way, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, but if you have questions or things are resonating and you're digging it, love to see it in the chat, just so that I know I'm going on the right track. When you are caught in the emotional riptide of like this analogy, or emotional riptide of a toxic thought pattern, and all the feelings and behaviors that get dredged up in it, it's so critical to have a life jacket ready, something to grab onto as your prefrontal cortex slowly turns back on and you can see and act more clearly. Because guess what, by the way, this is what's happening. When you feel like, oh, I don't know, you get that email from your boss and you're like, am I about to be fired? And your face flushes and your mouth goes dry or whatever. Literally, it's because your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain that manages the executive functioning, is turning off. Okay. So that's why we do not want to be reactive in these situations, meaning pause. And that is difficult for us to do when we feel pressure to perform. We're obviously in a society that puts pressure on us to to perform. Slower is better. So this is a good thing to slow down on, is to create what I call a coping card. Okay, this is my version of a life jacket, and I put it on my phone. And I'm going to give you examples of things to put on your coping card. So when you are in this moment of, oh, I'm feeling all the feelings, or I'm having this thought, I want you to look at your phone. All right, I'm not at the social media and doom scrolling, but you're going to go find your note, or you're going to print it out. It will have things on it that show you that you are more capable than you think of weathering the storm, whether the storm is happening outside of you or inside. Okay, so in my case, the storm is the fire that has caused chaos in my family as we evacuated. But also some other things I've had to remind myself are that feelings and thoughts are not facts. However, they are also not to be ignored. So a short-term solution to dealing with challenges inside and out is to bury your baggage and simply soldier through, right? That would be toxic positivity. Oh, it's fine. Like we've had to evacuate, right? Our house didn't burn down and other people are suffering. And so I shouldn't be feeling bad. My gosh, that is some gaslighting happening here. Many things can be true at once. Other people are suffering more than me. And I have little children who are confused about why we are not home. And that is difficult, right? So it is very important that we do not gaslight ourselves. We do not bury, we do not numb. Otherwise, long term, that shit will bite us in the butt. And you all know that. It's probably happened to you, right? I think of feelings as bouncing balls on the top of a pool. You push it down and up, it's inevitable it'll pop back up. So here's my suggestion is that we process our thoughts and feelings in the moment in a contained way, okay? We're not going to have a total breakdown because we don't have time for that right now. And we need to reserve that for our therapist. But we cannot just soldier on. We've got to take a moment and honor the fact that we are going through some difficult stuff. Again, whether it's internal or something externally triggered. Helpful mantra. So for you and your part that tends to pop up, so let's say take my perfectionism. Perfectionist Patty. No, that was procrastination Patty. Pammy, I don't know. Pammy perfectionist. She gets really mad at herself when she makes a mistake. So I would put on my note coping card, whether I print it out, which I've done, or on my phone, I would say, you did the best you could with the information, resources, and experience, and wisdom that you had at the time, right? So something that, when I get activated, when I make a mistake, I can just quickly look at that mantra. The other thing I would put on my card is a picture or a picture of me as a child, as well as a reminder of something difficult that I've gone through before. Could be anything. Could be something to make you laugh. Because in my case, it's me in a massive snowsuit going down a Black Diamond. Long story. It was a hard situation of trying to get down the Swiss Alps when I couldn't ski. And I remember as I went down this ski slope, I thought to myself, if you can survive this, Claire, you can do anything. Of course, I went through much harder things after that, but maybe remind yourself we can do hard things, right? As Glennon Doyle likes to say. And that photo of you as a child, that's a way of honoring that hurt self, remember, right? That part of us that is always there to be accessed, but we have a hard time getting there because we're all caught up in our baggage. Remember her, okay? And then the words BAFA, so BAFAH. I'll go into that in just a second. I also like to think of it as the 5-finger framework. You notice I love to use 5 because it's just so you got your hand, and that's easy to remember. And so remember when I said we don't want to bury our feelings, but we also don't have time to really fully process it. We've got to find a kind of happy medium, a contained way to honor our experience. This is my version of it. So you've been activated somehow, this part of you that gets in the way. First, be body. Remember to get into your body and breathe. Because chances are, I'm not saying this is all in your head, but it is absolutely associated with a story that you are telling yourself about the situation. And we store a lot of our trauma in our body. If anybody's read The Body Keeps the Score, another great book. So first, let's get into our body. Breathe, wiggle our toes, wiggle our fingers. All right. Acknowledge, acknowledge. Okay, so recognize that this part of you, this teammate of yours, is trying to protect you against something. So maybe just acknowledge the core fear. So I made a mistake, or my boss says, I don't have a boss. Or you guys are my boss, right? Let me give you a great example. I sent out an email to 50,000 people. Long story short, 2 people wrote back and told me I was a total asshole in my email. Were very mean to me in their response to me. And I really got activated. At first, I was enraged. Then I felt horrible. Shit, did I make a mistake? I went through my whole cycle, right? What am I actually afraid of? What is the core fear that this email triggered in me? I have to ask myself that in the moment. It's hard to do, but hopefully if you've done that previous exercise of who's at your table, you'll be familiar with the intent, the positive intent to protect you from what core fear. You'll know it. Feeling. All right, we're going to locate the fear in our body and breathe. So we're going to do the two bodies first. It's a reminder to get into your body. Now we've got to feel the fear in our body. So if I am afraid, if you say that I'm like bad at what I do, I'm afraid that I am an imposter. If I'm not good at what I do, then this is all a waste. Where do I feel that in my body? I feel it as a lump in my throat. Okay. So this can be helpful. This work can be helpful to do well before you actually need BAFA to just start familiarizing yourself where your fear tends to be. A, accept. All right. So imagine that your fear comes true. So imagine, I don't know, if a ton of people email me and say, this webinar was not helpful. It was a waste of my time. So like really face your fear. Because by the way, that fear, it's subconsciously in you anyway. So you just actually looking at it, yeah, it's going to be frightening for a little bit. But again, short-term fear, short-term stress for long-term peace. Okay. So you look at that fear. I'm going to get a bunch of emails from you guys. You really didn't like this webinar. Also, nobody's going to subscribe to my newsletter. I can't support my family anymore. Okay, I will be okay. I can weather this. Here's the thing. When you tell yourself this, you may not quite believe it yet. So just see if you can have a dialogue with yourself. Okay, I don't believe it. And the more you dialogue with it, really remind yourself, keep feeling it in your body. Because I'm telling you, if you try to intellectualize this stuff, if you keep it in your mind, you will start going down paths that are not quite right for you. We really ignore the wisdom of our body. I just sit with this for a second. It's okay, I can weather this. And if you need to remind yourself that you've done hard things before, you will be wiser for it. Again, it's not toxic positivity, but just keep going towards the wisdom. Honor, hum. Okay, this is the last H as part of BAFA. I honor myself. So, by the way, humming, it stimulates the vagus nerve, which moves your body from a fight or flight state of stress to a rest and digest state of relaxation. I love that line. So, I actually find myself humming all the time throughout the day, just naturally. And when I read this, I said, oh my gosh, that makes a totally sense. So, honor, I honor myself. I honor this process, right? You can't rush it. It's part of, again, the wisdom that you are collecting in your life. And that's something we'll talk about in our final session of January. How do you transform challenges into gold, right? And it's part of that wisdom. All right, almost done here before we do the breakouts. Skill number 4. Oh, by the way, I'm just checking. Yeah, photo of you as a child is a great way to remind yourself of when you were badass and adorable, of which you still are. Yeah. Definitely feeling the survivor's guilt that I'm fine while people I know just 5 miles away lost their homes and struggling to validate the other hard things I'm dealing with. Yeah, great thing to just say. Many things are true at once. Many things. I am many things, right? Many things are true at once. I am many things. And then how can I don't want to get into our last session. That'll be our last Sunday of January. Energize from within. Okay, so this is the 4th out of 5 skill sets needed to get out of your own way. All right, so to get into the best relationship of your life with yourself so that you can have the best year, no matter what happens. How much time and energy, this is actually a good question for you all. So I'd love to see you in the chat. How much time and energy do you feel like you spend trying to improve things that you don't like about yourself versus pouring gasoline on what you do? Okay, so I'm talking about investing in things that kind of light you up. How often are we thinking about how can I do more of what I love to do versus when we go to bed at night, how often are we thinking, here's what I'm dissatisfied with about myself and my life and how do I fix it? What kind of balance do you feel like you right now are having? And I'm not seeing anyone in the chat, so I'll just speak for myself. I certainly have spent a lot of time on the what do I not? That's fine, right? That goes to my earliest point of we need to make plans for our obstacles and not just our aspirations. However, I do think we really skip. Okay, Ramona, that's perfect. 50-50. That's a great balance. That literally is balance. It's just so important though that for all the parts of ourselves we don't like, right? Like the perfectionist or the procrastinator, for the self-sabotager, a way to get those parts to turn the volume down is if you can turn the volume up on the parts of yourselves that light you up. Okay. And I'm not talking about the parts that you love. Okay. So I'm not talking about, oh, I love that I'm a performer, right? Because I do love that performer self. Because if we're only into the parts we love about ourselves and we disregard the parts we don't, the whole point is to love everything equally. So I'm going to give you exercises for what exactly here. It's about doing things that we love doing for the sake of doing it. So it's not just about, oh, because when I do this part, that's when I get rewarded, right? Or other people like me, or this is the people pleasing. It's no, I like making art even though nobody buys it. I actually don't like making art. I like writing. How about that? I like writing, even if nobody's paying me to write. Literally, the act of writing itself brings me joy. That is something I need to be investing in. And it's just, you learn to love doing things for the experience rather than the outcome. And that will then translate into a more joyful, fulfilling life. B, it'll turn down the volume on those pesky parts. And C, taking risks will seem a lot less scary because when success comes from the process and not the performance, you realize that you already have everything you need to feel good. As hokey as that might sound, I'm living proof because again, I swear to you, I am the meanest person to myself that you will ever meet. And when I do things for pleasure, for joy, for desire for myself, and not for the outcome, I am free. So where do you start? I'm going to give you two exercises. One is core curiosities. So I think that our natural proclivities and curiosities they carry so many clues about ourselves, and it would really be wise of us to mine them. So for example, I loved playing with paper dolls when I was growing up and creating kind of imaginary worlds and then acting them out. And it's not a surprise that now I'm a writer and a speaker. Okay. So maybe reflect on what you loved doing as a child. And I think the earlier the better, since by the age of 5 to 7, our inner narration was set, right? So that way that we speak to ourselves, it was being first spoken to us as we were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? But then others' voices we adopted as our own. Oh, and in that, whatever their baggage was now became our baggage. Okay. So if you can try to remember what you loved doing before you were 5, maybe you talk to family, what elements of it can you do now and can you practice it consistently? And then the 8 C's. Okay. So remember, I mentioned IFS, internal family systems, modality of therapy. They say that there are basically 8 components of self, right? So the part of you that is underneath all of the baggage, right? And this part, or it's not a part, it is self, compassion, creative. It's curious, it has confidence, it's courageous, it's calm, it's connected, it's clarity, right? The 8 C's. I love that my name is Claire, goes along with this. Here's an activity for you all. Out of this list of 8, is there any one of them that you just feel instinctually pulled towards? Okay. Because you're probably craving it. Maybe it's one of them, or maybe it's one that you just love doing, right? You love being creative. Okay, great. Love for you to think of an activity that allows you to really activate this part of you. Okay. And this activity that you think of, I want it to be short because I want you to do it consistently. Just the most important thing is that when you do this act, so again, if it's writing is yours, you really need to feel creative when you're doing it as best as you can. So you're not like play acting at it. You genuinely, it is this word in motion. So whatever one you feel pulled towards. I think out of the exercises, this one, by the way, when I was thinking about myself and paper dolls, I was probably 7 or 8. So if you're like, oh gosh, I can't think of anything before age 7, it's fine. Whatever you just loved doing as a kid and didn't feel like you had to monetize it, basically. I find that exercise to be easier than the 8 C's personally, but when I do this with other people, they're split. So whatever one feels, okay, I can think of an activity. The last skill before we go into breakouts, and don't worry, I will give you exactly the prompts for the breakout, so you don't need to be furiously taking notes here. Although just a heads up, everyone gets the recording, but nobody gets the slides unless you are a subscriber for $8 a month to Really Good Work Advice. Skill number 5, strengthen connection to others. Okay, so I'm going to venture that you probably haven't shared your baggage with a lot of other people, right? The parts of yourselves you really don't like. Maybe you've got a few friends, you're like, oh man, I'm procrastinating again. But chances are you're not sharing it. By the way, loving people in the chat, talking about the things. Yeah, Nisa, I used to love making up dance routines to songs of the radio when I was bored and alone as a child. Such a good thing to continue to do if you're not. Here is our greatest fear, and it is the kernel buried within every single other fear we have, and it is being rejected by others. By the way, if you're like, huh, how'd you come up with that? This is from our ancestors, right? because we are only here as human beings because our ancestors survived over time. They did what they needed to do to survive. And one of those things was, let us not get, as they say, kicked out of the tribe, right? We've got to share the meat with everybody in the tribe, meaning you've got to fit in. Got to fit in. You can't be rejected, because rejection by others equals death back in the day. But that was coded in our DNA, in the way that we are wired. That is reflected. Here's what I think. This is my suggestion. The ultimate balm, love that word, to our ultimate fear is through connection with others. We're afraid to be rejected. We actually must deepen our connections with others. And we've got to do it in a vulnerable way. Okay. Now, am I saying, do we trauma dump on other people? No, unless they are licensed to receive it and you are paying them. This is not what I'm suggesting. Instead, I want us to think about, what are some ways in which we can be vulnerable that are maybe just a little bit outside of our comfort zone? I'm going to give you an example in my life. I used to wear a ton of makeup. I wrote a whole essay about it, the makeup intervention, because I had a boyfriend once sit me down and literally say, you do not need to wear all this makeup. I was literally one of those purple eyeshadow, foundation on my face. It was intense, right? What did I do? Did I just stop wearing makeup? Absolutely not. That was way too far outside of my comfort zone. What was right outside? All right, I started to wear cover up and not concealer or foundation. Okay. Then I stopped wearing blush. Then I said, so you just took a little bit away at a time. So first, identify the vulnerable parts of you that you feel comfortable, quote, exposing. And I'll give you another example in just a minute. Then I want you to find your people, okay? So they should feel similar to you. You should feel like I see myself in them and they see themselves in me. But I do urge you that they be one step ahead in some aspect. I think it's very important to surround ourselves or be in environments in which we aspire to be better or greater than ourselves, but not in a way that makes us feel less than, but in a way we feel, okay, I want to step up to the plate here. Then you've got to commit to connect and sustain that connection. So here's my example. I have a memoir that I'm writing that is obviously very personal and it is pretty vulnerable. And I'm a big procrastinator. But I recently connected with a woman who, my son is medically complex, has congenital heart disease, and her son sadly passed away from it. And we connected. She's also a writer. And now we meet twice a week and we do just co-writing, to just accountability partnership, but we're both writing. That is a connection. That's a vulnerable part of me, right? My son's story, my story, it's writing, it's putting myself out there. And I found a person who gets me, but she also is farther ahead in her writing than me and is very disciplined. And so I aspire to be like her. And we literally meet every week. This might not be right for you all, but I hope it inspires you to start thinking about how it's not just, oh shit, I'm feeling lonely, I should probably reach out to somebody. Like, you've got to put this in your calendar. You've got to make this part of your life and be intentional with it. And so I want to be your people, right? I want to be your person. And that's part of really good work advice. And by the way, besides the weekly email, we're going to do a monthly meetup like this. If you all want to do more than a monthly meetup, I'd love to explore that with you, whether it's virtual co-working or office hours on my end to answer your questions. This is really meant to be shaped by you, but you got to subscribe. Technically, it's $8 a month, but I'm giving you all discounts, and I'm giving you my to-done tracker, and I'm giving you morning meditation. I know I went through the to-done tracker really quickly, but we got to do our breakouts, and I don't want to sell to you because I think the people who want to be part of this are going to be part of it. Come though, January 19th and January 26th, Protect Your Energy, Transform Challenges. Okay, before we get into breakouts, also email me back because I'll send you the recording and a bunch of stuff. If you want to do private coaching, because I know this stuff is very intense and requires much longer, supportive accountability, I'm your girl. All right, let's get into those breakouts. I know I technically should go way slower on all of my, sales points, but again, the right people will recognize themselves in everything I'm sharing and will reach out. So if you feel called to do that, I am absolutely here for you whenever you need. So let's talk about the part that's causing us most disruption in our life. So again, I'm not going to go back in the slides. So this is your slide. So keep a mental note, and we're going to do about 10 to 15 minutes of 10 minutes of breakout, and then we'll come back together. So think about the part that's causing most disruption for you. Try to identify the positive intent behind it. See if you can, how has it helped you so far, right? My perfectionism has absolutely helped me, for sure. My procrastination, by the way, has also helped me because I procrastinated so long, and then it turns out I didn't have to do the thing anymore, or I didn't even want to do it after all, right? This is the first part of getting into that more compassionate, objective way of interacting with yourself, right? That's the foundation of a better relationship we'll have with ourselves. If this is the only part or the only section that you talk about in your breakout, great. If you get through it and you want to do the next one, awesome. Just pick one of the 8 C's. So maybe, I don't know, what's confidence look like? What's an activity that would allow me to feel confident or act out my confidence, right? Share that. And by the way, if you want them to hold you accountable, checking in with you in a couple of days, hey, did you do the thing? Exchanged information, or at least offer up your own. And then we will come back together. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share now that we're back from the breakouts. Does anyone feel comfortable sharing for themselves what this exercise brought up for them? And again, we don't have time or to go too deep into it, but if you felt like, oh, there was a bit of an aha moment here, or if you struggled with something, I know last time somebody asked a really good question. We did a bit of live coaching. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Deirdre said, Winnie Lee is super sweet and had the cutest dog. Love it. Good. I like that's a good shout out. Yeah, so if you want to give a shout out to someone else, you could do that too. But yeah, feel free to unmute or jump in the chat. I'll read it aloud. If there was any kind of aha moment that you had in doing this work or throughout this presentation, or if you have a question for me, we've got a few more minutes. Otherwise, we'll call it a day. We'll call it a Sunday. Or for those watching the recording, whatever day of the week it is.
I'll be happy to share.
Yeah.
I missed last week. I think that you're excellent at what you do. I've never done this before. My friend forwarded this over to me. Last week I didn't make it, and I have a whole page of notes.
Nice.
I am an acting coach, and I have a daughter who is an actor, and she loves being on camera. I don't. I love coaching. And for me, because we're in a digital age and stage, a lot of times people want to see you and all this stuff. And so for me, I've always had the fear of going live,
Mm.
right? On Instagram or whatever platform I'm on to share my client's success and so forth. And Friday, I actually took the leap. I was drained. I had a rough week. Somebody hit my car, like all this stuff. And I said, you know what? I don't care. I'm going through something. I need to get out of my own way, go live on Instagram, share some tips about how people can get into the business. And it actually helped. I got 2 new clients. And I didn't feel as bad while I was on live, but beforehand, I wasn't going to go live. I was like, oh, gosh, I look drained. My eyes look like just tired and so forth. So for me, my biggest thing was like standing in my own way, judging myself. And then for the seat and procrastination. So I procrastinate a lot when it comes to certain things like that. But how it helps me is when I'm working under pressure, sometimes I come up with my absolute best ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to actually work on something that I'm going to be releasing with my daughter due to me being a procrastinator and having to figure something out. So I'm excited about that. And then the 8 C's, the one I relate to the most. I preach being confident and teaching people confident. And sometimes I don't feel as confident, which
Yeah.
is why I don't go live or do what I'm supposed to do. And so that's also why I said I'm going to turn my camera on. Most times, if I join something, I
Yeah.
always keep my camera off. And I said, you know what? I'm going to stop doing that. I don't care what I look like. I'm just going to turn my camera on. So I'm working on not judging myself as much and just really being confident in where I am and who I am at the moment. That's
Mhm.
it.
I love everything that you shared. Let me give a couple of points back to you for a quick second because it all really resonated with me, and I know for sure other people too. Let me talk about how procrastination helps us because you're right. It can create conditions for ourselves that, I don't know, we work well under pressure, right? So you wait to the last minute. Oh my gosh, we get the surge of adrenaline, and all of a sudden we're like coming up with ideas and getting shit done. That is true. Here's what my suggestion is, and this has worked for me. Can you create a pretend procrastination? So you're going to create like the environment of procrastination without doing the procrastination. Here's what I mean by that. You're going to start working in sprints. So you're going to say to yourself, okay, I'm going to just challenge myself and see if for the next 20 minutes, I can either come up with as many ideas as possible or just give yourself some kind of like challenge that you have a deadline on. Of course, it's not the same thing as, oh, everybody's expecting you to have this done. There's no outside pressure. So you're going to have to role play with yourself a little bit. But even just the act of like an alarm going off or having a countdown on your computer or saying, I'm going to walk down the street and by the end of the block, I'm going to have filmed a live with myself. This is how I started doing more social media. I was calling it wisdom walks. I was literally saying, by the time I get to the end of the block, I have to have filmed it. By the time I get to the second block, I have to have uploaded it. That created a sense of urgency that I was craving and seeking through my procrastination. So it's really like working with yourself, right? Okay, I tend to work this well, but it also makes me burn out or add stress to my life. So it's a way of kind of fulfilling the need to do that without the burden of actually waiting for the last moment. So that's one thing I heard that I think could be helpful for you. And then the other thing is, I hear this from a lot of people. Just do it. Just rip the Band-Aid, get on the live, or do okay. And then I do it and I feel better. And this is true because I find the waiting and thinking about it is always worse than just doing it. However, that's a very tiring way to go through life, ripping Band-Aids, right? I want us to be kinder to ourselves. So another way to think about this could be, how do I make the experience of going live easier for me or more comfortable for me? And if I was working together as a coach, I would say, all right, here are some examples of what I mean by, quote, making it easier for me to do this thing. I would say, okay, what happens if it's not just going live, but you're going to pick out 5 things you're going to teach people as it relates to the subject that you want, right? 5 things. And you're going to make a video about one of those things. And you're going to do it with a green screen. And behind it, and this green screen is going to have the tip. And so you're just talking and you're pointing to the tip, right? So it's about, I know there's a little bit of a learning curve in what I just shared. And anybody who doesn't know social media is going, what is a green screen? But my point is, you can make the environment easier for you to want to do it, right? So you're not just constantly, I hate working out. Can you make working out fun? That's a good analogy, right? So again, it's going to require some thinking, some creativity, but I just want to forewarn anybody who feels like in order to get the things done that they want to do, that it has to always be a like ripping of a Band-Aid. Does that hopefully that resonates. And the other thing is, don't underestimate how badly people want to feel better about themselves. And a way to do that is when they see what you're going through, they go, oh, okay, me too. So you get on and you're like, I'm exhausted. I've had a week. Yeah, me too. Like I see you, I'm like, oh, okay. I've also had a week, obviously. Listen, I almost debated, I did my hair for today and I put on a little bit of makeup. A part of me was like, should I even do that? Because I left a motel to come to my mom's house, but I just left a motel and it was really crazy. Now I almost feel inauthentic showing up. Like, now I have lipstick on. Maybe I should just be a messy self. You still have to deliver the message. You still have to be, if you're, especially people are paying you or whatever, you still have to be professional-ish. But if you're too perfect, makes people feel bad about themselves, actually. So I go, oh, I'm not as good as her. So it's this fine line where it's like, you look great. Yeah, thanks. I decided for me, I wanted to put on the lipstick. But point being is the more sort of perfect we are in the world, it's a shield that then doesn't allow us to deeply connect with others. And if my whole point in all of this is we are just seeking to be accepted and loved by others, then we have to realize like the very things that we're all the perfection or the self-doubt, don't put yourself out there or do it in a certain way, is actually making it harder for us to find our people and to connect with them. And that just hurts ourselves, but it also hurts them too, right? We don't want to make people feel isolated when there are life experiences, but it's a balance and it's a journey, and we're technically at time. And I obviously could go on and on forever, which happy to do next Sunday. So hopefully I will see you. And we'll be talking about when you do all of this great work, how can you freaking protect it, right? So if anybody struggles with burnout or setting boundaries, we're going to talk about boundaries. How do you set boundaries with others? How do you set boundaries with yourself? And how do you do it in a way that, again, does not always feel so hard? Is it possible to do this work and not have to suffer for it? That's my goal in all of this. Super appreciate you for being here. And also really glad. Thank you to the friend who sent this to you. Please spread the word, send it to more people. I really try to keep doing a lot of free stuff throughout the year. I don't know how much I can do, but for sure, this is all January is free. Make sure people who need it see it, pay it forward. Lots of love. I'll see you on the email and reach out if you want to do any kind of private coaching or have any questions. We got this.